showing some quick facts about Brazil, and I've got to write it down because otherwise, and show it on PowerPoint, otherwise I will ramble. And then we have a video clip that will introduce our ministry. And I'm been debating with myself whether I should go through this whole thing, but I'll come back and say a few words and we'll open up for questions. Just a little bit of information that might be of interest. I am a second generation missionary. I grew up in Brazil. The Swedbergs have been in Brazil since 1969, July 9th. That's 55 years in case, so you don't have to pull your shoes off and count on your toes. But I don't know that Brazil knew what was hitting them when we arrived. I was 5, so yes, that puts me at 60. And then Anita is also a second generation missionary. She grew up in the Dominican Republic. Her parents were Bob and Nina Meyer. Her father was promoted to glory earlier this year in February. He was 94, having served the Lord both in the Dominican Republic, and then after we were married, they went to Ecuador and opened the field of Ecuador for Baptist missions. And her mom is 92, on her way to 93, and we all thought we were going to lose her first, but she's still with us and doing relatively well in Florida. So it's a little bit of background, and I think that'll be important as we look at what's going on in Brazil. First thing I want you to get an idea of is the vast size of Brazil. I put it inside of all of South America because Brazil is roughly 50% of South America. Because Brazil is so populous, there are more Portuguese-speaking people than Spanish-speaking people in Brazil. And here's a picture that shows how wide Brazil is. And that's important. You'll notice that it's divided into states. There are 31 states in Brazil. If I remember correctly, it's on my fact list, and that's why I write it down. So some quick facts. It's the largest country in South America, roughly 50% of South America. It's the 5th largest country in the world by area, and the 7th most populous country in the world, 218 million people. And when I say it's the 5th largest country in the world by area, I want you to get a picture of this. Brazil superimposed on the United States. Because the United States is up in so far north, and because we're trying to get a round Earth on a flat map, the United States looks bigger. But the only thing that makes Brazil bigger, or makes the United States larger than Brazil, is Alaska. If it weren't for Alaska, Brazil would be larger. Brazil is as wide east to west as the United States is, and as long as it is wide. So it's a vast country. And the language in Brazil, as I've already mentioned, is Portuguese. But I'm sure you knew that, right? Because how many people tell me that they speak Spanish in Brazil? They don't speak Spanish. They were colonized by the Portuguese. And I was wrong. 26 states in Brazil and 5 different regions. And I want you to see this because people talk about the vast Amazon River basin, and it is vast, but it's only that green part primarily. The yellow parts are the western parts of Brazil, and particularly when you get close to Paraguay and Bolivia, in the yellow parts, it's a swampland, one of the largest swamplands in the world. Think of the Florida Everglades, something like that. With the Paraguay River runs through there, and I fished on it before. The fishing wasn't good the 2 times I was there, but it's a beautiful area. And the federal district right in the middle is where the capital is, Brasilia. The dark blue area is the northeast, and it's mostly semi-arid. You probably haven't heard of I wouldn't call it desert, but the arid areas of Brazil, it's almost desert. In fact, we live in this little state up here. Grande do Norte means the River Grande of the north. And there are parts of our state that during the dry season look very much like Arizona. It's very interesting. And yet, they've been having good rainfall. So that's the Northeast. And I spent most of my life in ministry here in São Paulo, which is the Southeast. And the city of São Paulo is right about here. And then when I was in 12th grade and 7th grade, I was 12 going on 13, we moved to this area of Minas Gerais. This is called the Minas Triangle. It looks like a big nose. But we moved to the city of Uberlândia, and my dad and 3 other missionaries opened up that region for almost for the gospel, not quite that desperate, but there wasn't very much gospel witness. There certainly no fundamental Baptist witness in that area. And then the southern states are the brownish ones near the south, including Rio Grande of the South, which just this year had terrible flooding and very different. So you'll know when I talk about moving from São Paulo, where our ministry was, up to the Northeast, it would be kind of like moving from Minnesota to Tennessee, or the hills of Tennessee, or Alabama, or someplace like that. So it's a very different culture and a long, long way away. Another thing I want you to see is Brazil is very urbanized, and I was looking for the stat, but something like 80% of Brazilian people live within 200 miles of the coast. All of that dark stuff is the population of Brazil. So you've got vast chunks of Brazil that is very, very sparsely populated. Brazil is like 87 to 88% urban, and mostly in the big cities along the coast. A few other facts about Brazil: mixed ethnicity. They've had a lot of intermarriage, 45.3%. I got these off of this particular set of facts off the CIA website. Whether that's credible or not, one never knows, but I think they have to keep up on this kind of stuff. 43.5% of Brazilians would consider themselves white, 10% black, indigenous. I was talking to someone the other day who thought that there were a lot of languages in Brazil and a lot of different races, and he was thinking of the indigenous population. I knew it was below 2%. Here it says only 0.6%. And many of them speak Portuguese. And Asian, 0.4%. I'm guessing that the mixed ethnicity contains a lot of people that have Japanese in them. There were 4 waves of Japanese who were invited over to be farm workers. Most of them became very wealthy businessmen. And here's the way it looks like demographically today. When I first arrived as a boy, we talked in terms of 80% Roman Catholic. I don't know if that was true, but in the 60s, 80% Roman Catholic, and now we're talking in terms of only 53% Roman Catholic, and evangelical, which is everything, including what we term in Brazil neo-Pentecostal, which is a cult, and there are many different churches. They're a mixture of health and wealth and really weird beliefs, and they don't really have a structured theology. They believe whatever the pastor at the moment tells them to believe. Their big thing is to make a lot of money and take it from the poor people. And they're the largest group of this evangelical group. 25% 25.5%. And other Protestant probably would be Colts, 1.2. Then there's this strain of African Brazilian spiritism that we would call Umbanda and other things like that, almost 2%. Other 3% are other agnostic atheist, 0.6%. But notice this: this is the fastest growing segment of Brazilian society right now. The nuns, they've been burned by false religion, particularly false evangelicalism, and it's growing faster than any other group. They, people who were told that if they gave sacrificially, they would get rich, and they gave sacrificially and starved. And then they look at all religion as an attempt of the powerful to try to take advantage of the less powerful. I remember reading about Charles Finney when he had his great, huge revivals in upstate New York. And lots of people came forward and made professions of faith. And then about 10 years later, 15 years later, they noticed that nothing had really changed. And when they tried to go back in, they weren't allowed. And they called them burned over districts because they'd been hardened to the gospel. That's what's happened in many people's hearts in Brazil. Let me tell you quickly a little bit about the history of the Regular Baptist Association in Brazil. Maybe you haven't heard of the Association in the States. It was started in the U.S., I believe, in 1932. Am I correct? 1932. You will see that our first missionaries arrived in Brazil in 1935. And back then it was a separatist movement that prized biblical exposition and sound doctrine. And it was natural that American missionaries would try to organize their churches in associations so that they could organize and figure out how to start Bible colleges and how to send missionaries and all those kinds of things that are important. So our first missionaries, as I mentioned, arrived in 1935, and part of this story is the story of institutions that were started. Our first missionaries arrived in two areas, and I don't have a map up there anymore. They arrived in Manaus, which is in the heart of the Amazon jungle. It's 1,000 miles upstream from the mouth of the Amazon River, where the principal Amazon comes together with the merging of two different rivers. And right there, our first missionaries arrived. You can take it'll hold ocean-going vessel all the way up to Manaus. And it was the heart of rubber plantations and that kind of thing. So it was a natural place. And then the other one was in the northeast, in the most Catholic city in all of Brazil, Juazeiro do Norte. And we didn't lose a missionary. There was a lot of persecution. We didn't lose a missionary because God protected us. But some came very, very close. So the first seminary was started in the Amazon region. It was this institute at the first church site. It started in 1944, and then they made it into a seminary in 1949. It's been nationalized since the 80s. And then the second one is in the heart of the Northeast, in Juazeiro do Norte, called Seminário Batista do Cariri, and that was started in 1946. So the two groups of Baptist mission missionaries, they didn't have much communication back in those days. Started right around that time, during World War II and right thereafter. And then there was also ABWE, and they were working in the city, in the state and city where I am now, Rio Grande of the North. And they started a federation of regular Baptist churches, 1946, in this state. And that was orchestrated by some American missionaries, ABWE, in Rio Grande do Norte. The seminary and institute, Berean Baptist, that's a literal translation, Berean Baptist Seminary and Institute, CB is what we call it, was started in a city near Natal, where we are, called São José do Mipibu. I won't ask you to say that. But it was started, and it was just a men's seminary. And there was an institute in a city in the same state, about 4 hours away, and it was an institute for ladies. And they decided to merge them in 1957, and that's when it became Seminary and Institute, CB. So they date their founding from 1950, which means next year we'll be celebrating 75 years. That's where we now teach, even though it was started by the missionaries. And then the General Association of Regular Baptist Churches of Brazil was organized in 1953 in Juazeiro do Norte, Ceará, where that institute is, and Natal, Rio Grande do Norte, where my seminary is, are neighboring states. And these were the two most heavily regular Baptist states. And they came together at the behest of one of our missionaries, Jim Wilson. They organized it. It was interesting that Jim Wilson insisted that the original board be composed of Brazilians, and they adapted, in case you're interested, the New Hampshire Confession of Faith. And then there were other groups. São Paulo, the big city, ministry started in 1948. The seminary was launched in 57 by ABWE. The Regular Baptist Press was a joint ministry between ABWE and Admissions. It was started in 1958. You'll see in our presentation a little bit that I was the director of that for over 10 years. And then the State Association was started in 1959. And another one of our important seminaries is the one in Curitiba, which is down south in one of the southern states. And that was started in 1979. And I remember this part, when it was started and when they were discussing where it was going to go. We were trying to get up to Berlândia and went down south to Curitiba. So let me tell you about Baptist missions in Brazil. We arrived in 1935, as I mentioned. In 1990, we joined the mission in 1990 and got to the field in 1993. In 1990, we were just under 300 missionaries. Husband-wife count was 2 missionaries. This year, I counted, we've got 34. Every year, for the last 5 or 10 years, we've had people leave the field early for various reasons, some to take on other ministries or for health reasons, and retire, and we just haven't replaced them. The 2 couples that we've had go to Brazil didn't make it beyond their first term for various reasons. And I'm not saying that whether they're justified or not, but that's just the reality of things. And you saw how populous Brazil is. Over close to 220 million people in Brazil, 7th most populous. We're not done yet. And you think, well, maybe it's just Brazil. It's not. Our candidate class of Baptist missions was right around 42. It was one of the smallest ones in that time period. But this included missionaries all over the world, including us to Brazil and several others. The candidate class this year I was at conference was exactly 8 missionaries for the entire world. We are hurting, and we're not the only mission agency that's hurting. Let me tell you about some of the other missions, because I was asked to relate some facts. So I looked up on their websites and talked to some some of their missionaries. ABWE, which was our sister mission, and we worked very closely together. Their peak in Brazil was right around 100, a ballpark figure, in the 1990s when we peaked. Today they have 43. And to give you an idea, they've got their heavy emphasis is São Paulo, and Porto Alegre is the furthest state south, an area that had been overlooked with the gospel for decades, and now is finally getting the attention it deserves. It's an important area. They've got 5 in Manaus, which was news to me. That's the Amazon jungle, and these other 2 are in the northeast. Natal is where we live. So you can see how it's gone. I looked on Baptist World Mission, and they said that only the missionaries that agreed to be listed are put there, but they only have 3 missionaries listed in Brazil. I think there's at least a couple that's still associated with them, so it might be 5, but maybe there are others that didn't look, that aren't on their website. BIMI is another Baptist mission agency, and according to their website, and I counted missionary by missionary, there's 42. And then there's a mission agency called Brazil Gospel Fellowship, and I counted through them, and they have 54. But what you need to know, most in the Northeast and South, and I believe mostly church planting, but not exclusively. What you need to know are 2 things about this mission. First of all, it's not exclusively Baptist. You'll have Baptistic, I would say, but you'll have a group that calls themselves Congregational. You have another group that is a Bible church. So it's not exclusively Baptist, and it's not exclusively American. It's a mixture. In fact, Kevin will remember Kelso Clark and his wife Karen, who studied at Central. They're part of this mission, and I know, and they're both Brazilian, so it's fine. Just interesting that we've got both Brazilians and Americans part of this mission, and they've sent a whole lot of people down south, which is good, actually, down to Porto Alegre. And then some other missions. This Missão Batista Brasileira Fundamentalista was started out of the Curitiba Seminary with some of our missionaries. And it started going great guns, I would say, in the late 90s, early aughts is when they started. And they were one of the first mission agencies, Brazilian mission agencies, that sent people to foreign countries. They sent a very good couple to Mozambique, to part of Mozambique that had been not reached yet. You understand Mozambique speaks Portuguese, just like Brazil. And that couple has now come back, and along with some others that work with them, and now there are 2 Mozambican couples in Mozambique that are involved with this mission agency. They also sent a couple to India, and until the couple can no longer get their visas renewed. So now they've got 10 couples in Brazil, and they're kind of dwindling themselves. Another group started called Ministérios Multiculturais Maranatha. It's not exclusively Baptist. It was started by someone out of the regular Baptist movement who was pastoring Bible church. And you can see that they are the most used mission agency in Brazil. It's in the Northeast. That's the poorest area of Brazil. It's sending these missionaries all over. But not only Brazil, but Venezuela, Cape Verde. Cape Verde is Portuguese speaking. Japan isn't. English Guiana, Argentina, Madagascar, USA. Does that offend you to have missionaries sent here to the U.S.? It shouldn't. The couple that came to the U.S., according to the website, use the internet and computer technology. You must be studying here or something like that to reach Americans. In Bolivia, they've got 3 single gals, Portugal, of course, and Senegal in Africa. So I give you that. And so how should we think about all of that? Is there ministry still left? Because what I'm trying to show is that as American missions have decreased, and really it's a crying shame, we've been in Brazil, our mission alone, 90 years, maybe a little less, and we have, I mentioned 3 fairly good seminaries, smallish, and when I say seminary, Bible college level. We have a publishing house. I only showed you a few of the mission agencies. There are many more, most of them localized in their particular area. They're trying to actively reach Brazil. In our particular state, we have a number of municipalities that they're kind of like the city and the area surrounding the city. And they'd almost be like counties, they're about that size. And there are like over 50, and their goal is to get a church started in every one of those. Through their association. Their association is a way where they along with different mission agencies, try to finance missionaries. So is there a place, is it a good thing? What is there left to do for American missionaries? And it's here that I want to show our presentation, because it will give you an idea of the kinds of things that are still left to do. And also a little bit of our trajectory as a missionary.
I live in a city called Christmas.
Actually, it's called Natal.
Yes, but Natal is Christmas in Portuguese. As I was saying, Anita and I live in a city called Christmas.
Do you know what it's like to live in a city called Christmas?
Don't say it.
It's like Christmas all year round.
She said it. We moved to Christmas, Natal, 3 years ago. Since February of 1993, we have lived and ministered in São Paulo State. During that time, we started several churches, taught courses at 6 or 7 different seminaries, and lastly, directed the Brazilian Regular Baptist Press.
In March of 2020, God made it quite clear to us that we should resign from the publishing house. Our Brazilian brother needed us to focus on writing and teaching. So we began considering different Bible colleges. Of all Bible colleges in which we had taught over the years, one stood out, the Seminário e Instituto Batista Beliano, or SIBI. It was established over 70 years ago, but needed missionary help. We felt that this school was the best fit for us.
Coming to a decision was hard. It took us almost a year. One of the difficulties was that Natal was about 1,500 miles from Sao Paulo, where we had always lived and ministered. My parents, who still live and work in Sao Paulo State, are in their retirement years. The days are coming when they will need our help.
In the end, God made it clear that this is where He wanted us. Mark's brother Dan and his wife Lily live close to his mom and dad and are there for their day-to-day needs. And a seminary board voted unanimously to extend us an invitation. We moved in March of 2021. The Lord provided us a comfortable apartment on campus, and Mark has a large office where he teaches and chats with students.
We love this new ministry. Although our venue has changed, our goal hasn't. That goal is to preserve the permanent things for the coming generations and make our voice heard in the church, the home, the great Christian conversation, and the world. We no longer shepherd books and Sunday school literature through the publishing process. Instead, we shepherd the young hearts and minds of students who are preparing for ministry. We also preach and teach in as many churches and conferences as the Lord allows. Our primary desire is to write. So far, I have a Sunday school course on the Old Testament historical books that is waiting for one last edit. I have also written several articles that have been published in several different English publications. There are many more books and projects bouncing around in my head. They need to find their way to my computer. Please pray with me for this end.
I also have enjoyed Natal. The Lord has given me several opportunities to serve Him at the Bible school. I teach church music administration, English for theological reading, and piano. I also teach the occasional ladies' Bible study.
Just after we moved to Natal, the Lord led us to an additional ministry. It is called STEP, Strategic Theological Education Partnerships. This is a new ministry team of Baptist and missions comprising several missionaries who serve in theological education and who share a desire to support and grow institutions of biblical teaching on mission fields around the globe. I serve on the management team.
Our children are doing well. John and Sarah live in Urbana, Illinois with their 2 children, Mark and Nora. John is working on a doctorate in choral conducting at the University of Illinois. Benjamin and Jennifer Stillwell live in Flint, Michigan with their 3 boys, Russell, Cameron, and Benaiah. They are raising support to go to Trujillo, Peru as missionaries, which is where Benjamin grew up.
In November of 2023, the Lord unexpectedly dropped another ministry in our lap. Berean Baptist Church in Ceará Mirim is a fairly old church with a glorious past, but they went through a difficult period and were floundering with division and hurt. Many of their ministries had ceased, and even their Sunday school had only an adult class.
One Sunday morning, Mark got a desperate call from the leader of the association, asking if he could go out there to cover for them because their scheduled preacher had to cancel at the last minute. We went, and that initial emergency pulpit supply turned into a long-term commitment.
I hadn't realized how much I missed pastoral ministry, but I'm really enjoying this new assignment, even though it involves a 45-minute drive each way. Besides the regular work of ministry, it gives me a chance to mentor a young seminary couple who could possibly take over from us when the church is restored.
Pray for Judson and Alessandra, especially while we are on furlough. Judson is slowly finishing his Bible college degree. In the meantime, he teaches violin lessons and the research and writing courses at the seminary because he has a Master of Library Science. Alessandra is working on a doctorate in library science. She basically just needs to write her dissertation. The long car rides give us ample time for discussion and personal instruction.
We can already see the twilight of our ministry approaching. If the Lord should grant us strength and health, it is still a decade away, maybe a little bit longer. Please pray that we would finish well, and that the Lord would call someone to take our place. Maybe that someone would be you.
I think we can turn this off now. That appeal to get a replacement has been my appeal since we started this journey back in the 90s, and so far the Lord hasn't answered our prayer. So I keep making it, keep praying, and hoping the Lord will take someone back down to Jerusalem. Just a few more words, and then I'll open it up for questions. We do have prayer cards and prayer magnets that you stick on your refrigerator or garbage can or wherever it'll stick. And we would so much appreciate your prayers. We have a sign-up sheet, kind of crude, but if you would like to receive our prayer letter at your email, you can put your name and your email address on there. We've got coffee candy and a big book of pictures that you can see what Brazil looks like. So the question is, there still work to be done? The answer is yes, but I hope you've noticed that our relationship has changed. Notice that I was, of course, I told them I was available, but I was invited up to teach at that school. They needed my help, but the board asked me to go. And I don't have any administrative responsibilities at all at school. I just teach. But they needed my help. They were going through some financial difficulties, and I came fully supported. And they also went up their game, and I have a little bit more education than the average teacher at that school. So there is work to be done, but I'm under the Brazilians, or working with them. And then we ended up at the church because the association didn't know what they were going to do to be able to help that church. They didn't have anybody sitting around, but I could go. And so they asked me, and I was glad to go. I'm glad to work under my Brazilian brother. Just so you know, I've got a study here, and I was looking over it again today. It was done in 2007 by Alan Myatt and Nolan Pridemore, and it's called The Status of Evangelicals in the Mega Cities of Brazil, a preliminary study. Now, it's out of date, but in 2007, they did a questionnaire in 4 mega cities, one representing the Amazon jungle, one the Northeast, one the São Paulo area, and another Porto Alegre, and way south. And they discovered that if they're going to be strict about the answers, that they can be confident, about 0.6% of Manaus if they're going to be absolutely strict, between 0.2 and 0.4% of the population was believer. But a probable amount, 0.6% of Manaus, 3.5% in Salvador, 4.1% in Guarulhos, not São Paulo, and 0.8% in Porto Alegre. This after 70 years of mission work. There are possibly it's more than that. That's not very many. So what we have is a vastly unevangelized country, many of them who think they're saved because they're evangelicals, and yet a mature church association that does and can take responsibility. They are visionaries. They just sometimes need help. If I had somebody who had even just a Master of Divinity, Master of Theology would be better, some sort of doctorate would be best. I had the seminary in Manaus, the director, who was a former student, might come up to me and say, if you have anybody who would like to teach on the mission field, they don't want to worry about administration, they don't feel called into church planning, I'll turn over a department to them, just so we can raise our game. So maybe there's some young people here that would be interested in doing that. Besides Brazil, I'm involved in this other group, and there are many, many countries that are asking for people to come teach. And one more thing, and that is that besides the low percentage of people that are probably genuinely saved, there are vast areas of Brazil, whole states that have hardly any gospel witness at all, of any sort, and they need to be reached. Of course, we have to work with the Brazilian brethren, and that's not a bad thing. Taken about all the time, but I think there's still a little bit of time for questions, and I'd be glad to answer anything that you might have. Did I answer them all? I scared them off. Yes.
What are your needs, you and your wife's needs as you go back? And how can we pray for you? Are there specific needs you have, but how can we pray for you?
One need is we're beginning to lose churches. Some because they've had to cut back on our support because they're going through hard times. Others because they've changed, even though we haven't. So we have a small need for support. Not huge, but it would be helpful to pick that support back up. And then just pray. I've got a lot of irons in the fire. I've been known to do that, right? People say we need to learn to say no. I know how to say no. It's just I want to do everything that I'm offered because it's so much fun, and try to decide what to do the best thing. So I'm always trying to get caught up. Pray for my writing. Pray for our teaching. Pray for our health. It's gone through a bad spell. We're on the uptick, but that's a main concern. And then every parent who has to live away from his kids, wants prayer for the kids, that they would stay true to the gospel. And now our daughter, we've said our goodbyes. We're not gonna see her until they're gonna go off to Peru here in September, and we'll see them when we see them, probably later on this year or early next year. She's gotta get to Brazil for a few things, but things are a little easier. Pray for all that, all the separation, and it never gets easier. Any other questions? Pray for our church. See, I mean, it's looking like things are improving, and we're excited to have lots of, Jesus was taking the initiative, and yet we've got a lot of things going on. So pray that the hurts would get over and we reach people for Christ and grow as a church.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. This is the kind of presentation you don't often hear about a particular mission field. Maybe fewer pictures than you're used to, and a lot more facts maybe than you usually hear. But if you want to understand what's going on in Brazil, what you've heard tonight, it's kind of indispensable. I can add that Brazil has really good pizza.
And food in general.
Brazil has really good food in general. You know what? We need to figure out some way to do churrasco around here. Brazilian steakhouses are something else. What we want to do next is to receive a love offering for the Swedbergs. You haven't had a lot of warning on this. You haven't had a lot of warning that they were going to be here. But I wonder, Jerry and Phil, would you be willing to come and receive the offering? If you're going to make out a check, please make it to Bible Baptist Church, and we will convert your check